Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. We have a cold morning and a very soft breeze is blowing, which is kissing the top of the river and then coming this way. Today I would like to open up or discuss the next aspect of thought. We have been discussing about how thought is limited, how thought is creating these borders around the observation, and today maybe I would like to talk about how thought is responsible for creating experience. Now, there are two kinds of experience if I want to clean up the topic. For example, one is the experience of observation, for example. Like I'm observing this river, I'm observing the trees, and this very observation can be called as a kind of experience. Now, another experience is the experience in the field of the psychology, the psychological experience, which are of multiple types, and we are all familiar with them. Experience of happiness, experience of sadness, jealousy, fear, anxiety, depression, or loads of others. Okay, whatever you know it as much as I do. Being a human, all the kind of experiences in the psychology that we go through. So the experience of observation does not require the process of thought. Okay, to look with my eyes, I don't need thought. Okay, to make sense out of what I'm looking at, I can use thought. Okay, to look at the birds, I don't need thought. But to know that they are a bird and what kind of bird they are, I need thought. So in this way, I would like to open up the subject of experience which happens with thought in the field of psychology. I hope I have made it clear. So there are two experiences. We are not talking about the experience of observation, okay? We are not touching it today. Today I am opening the topic of experience via or using thought. So, how does thought create experience? Why does thought create experience? What's the need for thought to create an experience? That could be the first question as well. And what is the use of this experience that thought is creating and everything? So, yesterday I was looking at a video on YouTube, and it was an artificial intelligence conference, and there was a German scientist, cognitive scientist, and I think his name was Joshua Buck, Dr. Joshua Buck, maybe, from Germany, and he presented that the consciousness, as he used the term, is like a software which is run inside the brain. Okay, and he said that Unlike other softwares, for example, in a machine, a software just has to run the machine. But in living organisms like us, the software also has to convince the cells in which the software is running that it is in the interest of those cells to keep running that software. So, this experience of thought, this experience of consciousness created by thought, is like a software which is running in the brain. Okay? Now, why the brain is running it? Why the brain needs the software which creates different kinds of experiences? And that is because the brain feels it's in the interest of the brain to run it. Simple as that. I'm not going to make it too complicated. Or if you put it in other terms, that because the brain loves to be secure, just like every species likes to be secure. Every species is looking for this feeling of like to last longer and to evolve and to expand via having offsprings and everything. In the same way, the brain loves this feeling of security. And for that feeling of security, the brain feels that this software of consciousness, this software of thought, is essential, and it helps the brain to survive longer, to become more secure. So, this could be our first, introductory remark regarding why the brain is using thought and the experience of thought, because the brain feels like it helps for a longer survival. It creates a kind of security for a longer survival. Okay, I was reading an article where in I think it was in Nature's weekly magazine, and it said that the brain is producing the emotions. Okay, they provided the evidence that the emotions are produced by the brain. And as I was reading that article, I raised a question that if the brain is producing the emotions, then why is the brain producing negative emotions? Because the brain doesn't like negative emotions, and yet it creates them. Like, why would the brain do that? And then another friend of mine who was sitting next to me replied and said that because we need some kind of preventions, like we need fear to stop ourselves from crossing a line. Okay, so that's how he justified that. That's why the brain produces those negative emotions, is to draw a line that this cannot be crossed. You have to stop here. So, in this few minutes of introduction, I have covered that the brain is producing the emotions, the brain is producing the movement, the consciousness in that sense. And then I have suggested that all of this is happening with the process of thought. Now, thought is doing it in a very intelligent way. Okay, at least thought thinks it's very intelligent, but as we will open it more and more, we will see how intelligent it is. So, thought creates these different experiences, whether it's positive or negative, depending on the demand of the brain. Okay, thought thinks that it is helping the brain to do different things by creating these experiences. So, thought has to create an experience, and thought also has to convince the brain that the experience is real. Okay? As the brain is a living thing, it's a living form of matter, let's say, it wouldn't intentionally follow something which is not real. If the brain knows that something is not real, the brain is not so much interested in it. Okay, if you see that you see an image because of the sun's reflection or some reason, And from a distance, you are interested in that image, but when you go closer and you see, it was just a mirage and nothing more. And the moment you recognize it was an illusion, you lose interest in it. You are like, okay, it's an illusion. Let's move on. Let's go to the next thing. So, because thought itself is an abstraction, okay? Thought is not, how do you say? Thought is real, but it's not real as matter, okay? It's an abstraction. It's a process of abstraction in the matter. So, in the brain cells, which you can touch, sense, get evidence of, a process is running which is called thought. Okay? It's the same way like in a computer, you can touch the hardware, you can touch the chips and everything, but the software is actually an image which rises from the running of the hardware. Okay? In the same way, thought is an image which rises by running of the brain cells. When the brain cells are processing information and doing stuff, the end result is the movement of thought. So, thought is an abstractive process, an image. It's an image. Okay. Now, the problem that thought faces is that if thought if the brain comes to know that thought is an image, when thought is trying to help the brain, then the brain wouldn't be interested in that help, because the brain would not consider that as real, as a real thing. Okay, so thought has to hide the fact that it is an abstraction from the brain, and then only the brain is actually interested in what thought is suggesting. And when that is happening, then thought is giving directions to our lives in different ways. But when thought is doing that, the brain is totally unaware, or the brain does not feel that actually it's taking direction from an image, from an abstractive process. It's not as real as a stone in your hand. Okay, just like a software is not like the chips in the computer. So, thought has to hide the information of its own nature. Thought has to show that, hey, brain, let's do this, this can be done, and this. But at the same time, thought has to hide that it is not as real as the brain itself. It is just an image which is created by the brain for its own protection or for its own. But thought hides this fact. Or you can say it in another way, that the brain chooses to not see the fact that it is taking guidance from an image. Okay? Because it's in our security to look for real things and avoid illusory things. Because when you follow illusion, you anyway end up in a bigger problem. So, knowingly, the brain will not follow an illusion. Knowingly, the brain will not follow an image. So, the brain has to overlook the fact that thought is an image. Or, in the other way, thought has to hide the fact from the brain that it is an image and present itself as something real, as an entity, as the ego, which feels so real that yes, it is so an actual thing. So, in this way, thought, before even creating any kind of experience or any kind of thing, creates the image of the entity, the image of the ego, the image of the person who it is. Like me, I am this person and I have an image inside of me in my psychology, as I have an identity of myself in the psychology. And that identity is put together by the movement of thought. Okay? And thought has to hide the fact from the brain that it is just an image, an abstraction, a process in the brain cells. Thought has to present it as if it's something absolutely and fantastically real. just as a stone on the ground. And then the brain cells and the brain can follow it, because then the brain feels like it's following a real thing. It's following something real, which is solving its problems, which is helping it, and every other thing which you already know as you follow your thought. So today we will see at this fact that how thought is convincing the brain that an abstraction is something more than an abstraction, that an image is something more than an image. It's not just it's not as real as the water in that river, actually, So, but it has to be done. Otherwise, the brain would not take thought seriously, because it would see the trick that it's just an image. So, can we observe this in our daily life? Okay? Can we see that every time thought is trying to show us a solution, every time thought is trying to show us a way out, at that moment the brain is totally unaware that thought is an image, that thought is an abstraction. The brain considers or takes thought to be something absolutely real. So, I think this would be a good starting point to explore, and then in the next video we can start exploring the formation of an experience slowly and slowly, and then we can take step by step and examples of few experiences, few important experiences like fear, anxiety, happiness, or whatever, and then we can connect all it together. Like, we have talked about the limitation of thought, we have talked how thought is converging or affecting our awareness, and now we are seeing how thought is creating experience. And when we will finish the experience creation by thought, we can maybe sum it all up and say or see some things together as a whole by connecting all those dots together. So I hope you're having a beautiful weekend, as I am having. Next to this river is quite cold, but still a nice walk in the morning is always something absolutely fresh, actually, for the system after a long week. So I hope you will try this, and if there are some questions, as always, please write to me in the comments. Thank you.